Welcome to a fresh hour of CBS Sports HQ, folks. I'm Tommy Tran. We continue to be in bowl season during the holidays, but tonight we resume the college football playoff when the Fiesta kicks off in Glendale, Arizona. It'll be Penn State and Boise State tonight to see who will advance to the Orange Bowl to play the winner of Notre Dame in Georgia. Nittany Lions and Broncos are combined 10-0 in this bowl. Penn State is the lower seed, but is favored by 11.5 in this one. To get us ready for tonight's game, let's welcome the guys from the Cover 3. Chip Patterson and Tom Fornelli joining HQ here. So Penn State coming off that dominant win over SMU. Chip, what stood out to you about the whiteout game in Happy Valley?
I think it's going to be the way that Abdul Carter, Denai Dennis Sutton, and the rest of that Penn State defensive front played, because we had seen SMU's offense led by Kevin Jennings kind of motor through most of the competition. We knew that Penn State would be a step up in competition, but the Nittany Lions allowed absolutely nothing. And yes, Jennings contributed with some of the turnovers along the way, but the inability to run the football and the way that they were constantly playing behind the chains, I think really speaks to the way that this Penn State team can continue to try to win, not just against Boise State in the quarterfinals, but really make a run in this college football playoff. Because while they've got a fantastic running game, and while Drew Aller has taken some steps forward from 2023 to 2024, when I think about the way that Penn State can impose its will, flex its muscles, show its talent and athleticism advantage, it comes from the way that defensive front flies around. And so I think that's obviously going to be huge here against Boise State, but certainly a part of the DNA for any kind of deep run.
Yeah, I think when you look at this Penn State team, regardless of what happened in the first round, in which SMU with those 2 pick sixes early really just kind of turned that game on its head and just really made it a lopsided one-way affair. Not much to take a whole lot away from it, but just on the season in general, like, this is a Penn State team that has lost twice all season long. It lost to Ohio State and it lost to Oregon, 2 teams who, objectively, you can argue when they're playing at their best, are the best teams in the country. And while Penn State lost to both of them, Penn State also looked like a team that belonged on the field with both of them, particularly defensively. If you look at what this team has done all season long, the only 2 times they've had trouble stopping the run were in that Ohio State and that Oregon game. But the one thing that Ohio State and Oregon have in common is they had passing threats that Penn State had to worry about. Going into today's game against Boise State, do the Broncos really terrify you with their passing attack? Are you worried about Maddox Madsen, or is Ashton Genty the only guy you're looking to stop? Based on what we've seen from both teams, I think the Nittany Lions are pretty well equipped to deal with what they're going to see today.
On the flip side, let's start with something that's Broncos subplot and then get into Boise State macro, gents. Chip, Ashton Genty, 132 yards shy of breaking Barry Sanders' rushing record. What do you make of the matchup against Penn State for Genty? And if he somehow gets it in this game or beyond, is he going to be regarded as the true college rushing king?
I do think so. I mean, we're having this battle right now, I know, in the National Football League. There was Saquon Barkley and Eric Dickerson, and then how many games did OJ play? I think in general, if your name is at the top of the list, you are going to be the single-season rushing king. So let's get that out of the way. Yes, Genty has had a terrific season, worthy of that crown should he achieve it. But when I think about the path to 132, I'll tell you, it ain't going to happen by slowly chipping away, which speaks to the way that Boise State needs to try to approach attacking this Penn State defense. Because on a down-to-down basis, Boise State is not going to win. But can you scheme open those explosive runs? Can you create the mismatches, the numbered opportunities with some creative play calls? Because in the open field, once Ashton Genty gets that motor going, then yeah, I don't know if there's a defense in America that's going to be able to chase him down and bring him down. But so often when Genty did not have his most productive games, it was because he was getting hit in the backfield. So what can this Boise State offensive staff do to maybe get him to the outside, get him in open space where if he can break one tackle, he can make it go for a touchdown? And so the path to 132, the path to the rushing crown is explosive runs, a couple of 30, 40-plus yard runs, and that's also probably the best way for Boise State to get points on the scoreboard.
You know, the fun thing about records is there are different ones. I think if Ashton Genty gets the yardage record, then yes, the yardage record is his. He's rushed for more yards than anybody else in the history of the sport. If you want to argue about games played, well, then you could say he doesn't have the record for most rushing yards per game in a season, but he still has them overall. So, you can look at both ways. But no matter how you want to do it, Ashton Genty's had an incredible season. Now, as far as this matchup tonight, my concern is if you look at Ashton Genty and Boise State as a whole, and this is not to diminish anything he's done because a lot of teams have played easy schedules and very, very few players have had the kind of season Ashton Genty has had. So it's got nothing to do with the strength of schedule, but the fact remains Boise State has played one team all year long that ranks in the top 50th in rushing success rate on defense. They played them twice. It was UNLV. One of those games was Genty's worst on the season. And I know we've brought up Oregon, how great he played against them early in the season. Oregon only ranks 57th. Wyoming is 72nd. Those are the next two best teams he has faced. Penn State, top 5 across the board in every single rushing defense statistic you want to look at. So this is going to be a huge challenge for him. And regardless of how many games he's played, if he rushes for enough yards to set the record tonight and does it against Penn State, he deserves the record because it is going to be very hard for him to do it.
All right, you guys fairly measured on the Genty thing. I know our former colleague Brady Quinn's on the other side, really trying to protect tradition and nostalgia when it comes to Barry Sanders, by the way. In terms of the Boise State team this year, I know there's shades of 2007 against OU, the trick plays, the Cinderella story here. And yet they're the ones with the bye. They're the ones that are lower seed, albeit double-digit underdogs. And we'll get to a pick against the spread in just a second here, Tom. But I guess the question then becomes with this Boise State team, can they play fairly straight up? Are they going to have to rely on some trickery to get things done?
It does say a lot about the way that the playoff is structured and that the plucky underdog in this game is the higher seed who earned the first round bye. But that is the case in just reality when you look at these two teams. And I don't know if Boise State needs to get, pull out the bag of tricks. Although if you have one and you think it can help you get points, bring it out because you're going to need all the points you can get. But I do think that what we're going to need to see from the Broncos here is Ashton Genty is the offense. He has been all year, and it has been enough to get them to this point. But if they want to win playoff games and advance in this format against the teams that they're facing starting tonight and will in the next round, they have to be more balanced on offense. You need to see Maddox Madsen in this passing attack take on a bigger role. You need to see the defense force some turnovers and maybe get some help on special teams, whether it's with a kick or a punt return or just maybe even a fake punt if that's the way you want to go with the trickery. I don't think Boise State can just line up and say, let's go beat them. No, but I don't think they have to get crazy either.
One thing that Boise State has done all year, and something that's just kind of been rattling around my brain when I've tried to make the path for Boise State to win this game, they have been excellent at getting to the quarterback. Second in the nation in sacks, only behind Ole Miss. And while I do think some of that has been related to the fact that other teams are having to drop back to pass more to keep up with the production of Ashton Genty, I think about the fact that Penn State offensively was not terrific against SMU. As Tom mentioned earlier, the defense is responsible for 14 of those points in that game. And so if you're able to get at Drew Aller, somebody who usually does a fantastic job of taking care of the football and avoiding the sack, if you're even able to force him off his mark so that they somewhat limit the explosive nature of the downfield passing attack, if there's a spot where I do think Boise State doesn't need the trickeration, doesn't need anything weird or crazy, it might be being able to use that defensive front to speed up Drew Aller and see if Penn State's offense, which, as a whole, the stat profile is pretty good, but has been known to kind of spin its wheels for a couple series, couple possessions, or even quarters at a time. That's one spot where I'm looking at. If Boise's going to win this thing, that defensive line has to eat.
So let's get to X Factors. And Chip, I'm going to start with you because Tom had hinted at Maddox Madsen here. So what version of the Boise State quarterback is it going to require? Why has he become your X Factor for this game?
Because he was a different quarterback when he played against the best teams on Boise's schedule than on the worst teams on Boise's schedule. It's a great split. 6 games Maddox Madsen played against FBS teams with a winning record. 6 games they played against teams that did not have a winning record overall. And the striking difference really stands out. 7 touchdowns against winning record teams, 12 touchdowns against teams without a winning record. The passer rating, a really big gap in that as well. Yards per attempt, nearly a full yard per attempt there as well, 7 to about 8. So this is a quarterback in Maddox Madsen who, when he was playing against the worst teams on Boise State's schedule, and they were loading the box and daring Maddox Madsen to beat them, he did it. But when those same teams, when different teams who were even better were loading up the box with the same attack plan, he was not as effective. So the X factor here for me in this game is, what are you going to get from the Boise State quarterback, Maddox Madsen? Because if he plays the best football that he has shown, he might be able to give this offense a chance to cook, maybe trade a little paint with the Penn State Nittany Lions. But if he plays the way he played against the best teams on this schedule, I'm not sure this Boise State offense is going to be able to score enough to win.
We've talked about Ashton Genty and how important he is. We've talked about Maddox Madsen, but if Boise State is going to beat Penn State, it needs to be a true team effort. So my X factor is part of the side of the ball that Chip mentioned earlier in that pass rush. I'm looking at edge rusher Jaden Virgin Morgan, who led this Boise State team this season with 15.5 tackles for loss, 10 sacks. We need to see him get after Drew Aller and put pressure on him and force him into mistakes. Get home, make sacks, but more than anything, just harass him and make him uncomfortable. Because if you are Boise State and you want to pull off the upset as a double-digit underdog, you're going to need to force some turnovers. You're going to need to steal a few possessions. Virgin Morgan has been a game wrecker for this defense coming off the edge, and he needs to be one tonight to give Boise State a chance.
All right, get you out of here on a pick. Of course, again, the line's 11.5 total in the mid-50s. Tom, you and Chip both like the Nittany Lions in this game.
Yeah, I want the game to be close just as an objective observer looking to have a good time tonight. It's just the more I break this matchup down, the less confidence I get in Boise State's ability to pull this off. I'm laying it with Penn State. I think defensively they're just too much, and offensively I think they're going to be able to run the ball pretty effectively against this Broncos defense. So I like the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, I got a little treasure map here. I like Penn State for the full game. My best bet is going to be Penn State in the first half, where we can get it -6.5. I think they come out and set the tone early. And also, I like the over in this game, because I think as Boise State continues to try to get a little desperate, maybe we get some turnovers, some short field scores. James Franklin, in the games where he is supposed to win, we don't really see that big game James kind of result. I could see Penn State running away with this one and running the total up.
Okay, both our guys with the Nittany Lions laying the points and laying it with confidence. Our thanks to Chip Patterson and Tom Fornelli. Guys, certainly appreciate it. Part of the Cover 3 podcast with Danny Cannell and Bud Elliott. They're doing a live tailgate ahead of the Cotton Bowl in Fort Worth, Texas. Also a watch party for the Orange. So scan the QR code, get more deets on that, and have some fun with college football with our crew in the new year.